the world looks to California to answer the hard questions, for redemption, to introduce the unfamiliar, to be resilient. Because California bounces back, holds us accountable, values who we are, remains vigilant, defies those in our way, and stands for community. Here on the West Coast, we're at the center of it all. Los Angeles Times, the state of what's next.
There are a lot of things that I've learned over the years in business, but trust is really the most important aspect because it teaches you to rely upon the other people that you're working with. And City National Bank has been an integral part of our team. They are that key financial advisor that has helped us be successful at Foley Family Wines.
Good evening, and welcome to the Los Angeles Times Food Bowl Forum, Women in the Food Industry, presented by City National Bank. My name is Clint Schaff, and I'm from the Los Angeles Times. Tonight's conversation is the kickoff of our annual LA Times Food Bowl series in support of the Los Angeles Regional Food Bank. The LA Regional Food Bank collects food from charitable organizations and other groups and distributes to people in need every single day. With the help of 30,000 volunteers, LA Food Bank serves nearly 1 million people per month. Here's more on their important work.
The Los Angeles Regional Food Bank's mission is to mobilize every resource to fight hunger throughout our community. Even before the pandemic, the problem in Los Angeles County was urgent, with more than 2 million people not having enough food to feed themselves or their families. Since the outbreak, the need for food assistance has nearly doubled. We're now seeing people who have never needed help before depending on the Los Angeles Regional Food Bank. Every week, we're providing nutritious food through emergency food distributions so that people throughout our community can prepare well-balanced meals. These drive-through distributions provide large quantities of food to thousands of individuals and families who have been laid off or reduced to part-time work only. At each distribution event, we're helping 1,000 to 7,500 households. Because the food bank collects millions of pounds of food that's been generously donated, and because tens of thousands of volunteers have stepped up, every dollar that is donated is enough to provide enough food for 4 meals. With your caring support, we're not going to rest until the number of people in Los Angeles County who go hungry is 0.
Thank you, LA Food Bank. For more information and to donate, please visit lafoodbank.org. Now I'd like to introduce you to my LA Times colleague, food columnist Jenn Harris, who will moderate a conversation with our special guests. Hi, Jen.
Hey, Clint. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here tonight and to introduce you guys to chef, author, and TV personality Carla Hall. Chef, hi Carla, hi. Chef Minh Phan of Phenakite, who's also this year's LA Times Restaurant of the Year Award recipient. Hi, Minh. Also, Chef Bricia Lopez of Guelaguetza, this year's LA Times Gold Award recipient. Okay. And natural wine importer and distributor, Amy Atwood. Hi, Amy.
Hi.
Thank you guys all so much for being here tonight. We're thrilled to have you. I'm big fans of all of you. You're all excellent leaders in your fields. I wanted to start tonight's conversation by talking about the idea of success. And so what does success mean to each of you? Carla, if we could start with you.
I think success means doing something that I love and making a living. I think it means having opportunities now that didn't seem to be available to me before. I also think it means knowing my value, knowing that I spent so much time in my youth wondering if I know something. And now I feel like I know my value. That is success. And it doesn't even mean making a living, but yes, knowing my value and actually demanding that value.
That is so, so important. Minh, what about you?
I think success is a moving target, so for me, I think it's more important than success. It's always being really authentically me, which I think is doing what I love and sharing what I love is really important. So I guess that's how I would define success right now. But that changes depending on, what the world needs, what we need. So it's a moving target, but I think staying true to myself is really important.
Definitely. Amy?
For me, success means freedom of choice. Just like I've always said, that's what it means to me too. It's just the ability to have freedom of choice. And the other thing that has occurred to me a lot in the last couple of years is having the agency to uplift other women in the food and wine sector. So to me, that's success, is be able to have that agency to do that.
Mm-hmm. Bricia, what about you?
I mean, I'm going to steal all of you guys' answers. Number one, but also I'm going to add that I think success to me is getting to the point where I have the audacity to ask for what I want freely without having to apologize for it. And feeling confident in what I have to offer to the world. I think that for a long time, I felt that I was less than other people, and felt that I couldn't. I think it goes along with what Carla said about knowing your worth, but I think aside from knowing your worth, it's just having that audacity to ask for what you need, and the freedom of, I think, being able to decide. I think that's also like a privilege to be able to have that freedom of choice of what to do with your time. So I think that's super powerful. Not many people have it. And for me, success is being having ownership of my time.
Definitely. And
Did we lose? That's success is a
Yeah, I think we lost Jen, and I want to add, while we're waiting for her to come back, I was thinking about what success means to me. It's also about having my opinions valued, versus when you were young and, you're sitting around a table and just people listening to your perspective. And I think as women, that's really important.
Yes. I always say that, sometimes lately I've been paying more attention of how certain people just ask for what they want unapologetically. And I just think wow, the audacity. But I'm like, I should have that. Like, I should go out there and be like, I deserve this, right? And I think that that just comes from them never thinking anything other than that for themselves. So I just, success to me also means bringing that to my children, for them to grow up that way. And that doesn't mean entitlement. That just means knowing your worth. So I think for me, that's also a little bit of success, is being in that position where I can raise my children that way, to where they know their worth, but they also understand of their value. I think knowing your value is so important. Kind of what you said, Carla, I think it was so spot on.
Yeah, I love hearing you guys, because I think I think it's something that's really new to me too, is having a voice. I don't define success that way. I think, having a voice is important. I think Amy said something, freedom. I think that's something that's really important. It's because I think, having a voice means you have more freedom to say what you want and not being as afraid. I think that is, an ultimate definition of freedom is success, because that's what we're all, however you define freedom.
And I don't fear the difficult conversations as much as I used to a few years ago. Now, if there's a difficult conversation with a client, or a winemaker, etc. Like I used to like really, it would keep me up at night. I wouldn't sleep. Now I'm like, I'm going to sleep and I'll deal with this in the morning and I'm not worried about it.
That's awesome.
Hi guys, sorry to have left with some technical difficulties. I am back. Thank you for keeping the conversation going. Okay, what I wanted to ask you guys about before I froze was that in the food industry, in many industries, I feel like women can sometimes get pigeonholed into certain roles. In restaurants, specifically if you're in the kitchen, some people think, women are doing pastry. If you're in the front of the house, it's you're the host. Do you guys find that this is still the case? And how was it for each of you when you were advancing in your careers?
I'll go first. My first job, my first externship was at Bernadette. And I came in as, thinking I would, work on the fish station, or at least, like try to stage and get in there. And they looked at me and they're like, Asian woman, you're on the wrong floor. You need to go to pastry. And I'm like, no. I think I'm supposed to, meet with, the fish team. And they're like, no, you just go to the pastry. And that's where they just sent me there without even getting my name or where I'm supposed to be. And that's how I ended up in pastry. So I think that's where I started. And now it's not like that anymore at all. I hope it's not, at least not in my kitchen.
Good. Well, for myself, I grew up in the restaurant industry. My dad founded the restaurant, and my dad is like really definition of when someone draws out a Mexican macho male, they draw my father. Like that's my dad. But I think my dad also, what he gave me was a lot of empowerment, and he always encouraged me to never look at myself because I'm a woman, it's this. He always told me you should never pigeonhole yourself. But I will say that our restaurant management team has evolved into now we are mostly women who are in management positions. The other day, I was even just looking at my line. I was looking at all the runners, and there were 3 women runners in the line, which back when I was younger, the runners who were running food were mostly dudes. So for me, it made me so happy. Our main manager is a woman, our head cook is a woman in our kitchen. It's mostly women who are running the place, and for me, I think it brings me so much joy, but it also brings that whole, I truly believe that when women rule any space, like shit gets done. And I've seen it over and over and over again. And I'm seeing a lot more acceptance from male counterparts, especially because I come from a Latino culture, and in a Mexican household, the Mexican, culture is mostly, the man. So I've seen so much more acceptance from my male team toward our women management, and it makes me really, really happy. I have seen the shift, and I've seen, and it's been great. And I think all of them even say like, "Oh wow, things are like running better." I'm like, "That's right, because women are in charge."
Exactly. Yes.
That wasn't my experience. I guess I was working in restaurants, 25 years ago, but I remember I had also transitioned out of a corporate job. So when I was interviewing after culinary school and I was interviewing for externships, I would ask the chef about the culture in the kitchen, because I knew what environment I needed to excel in. And I had friends who were in really harsh male-dominated kitchens where they got pretty much beat up. But I had pretty much gone through that kitchen, even being promoted to sous chef, early on. And I think it's because I was in a very supportive kitchen. And I remember telling the chef, I said, "Are you a screamer?" And I don't mean personally, but are you a screamer? Because I know that if you're screaming at me, I can't do my job. And so, but I was also 30 years old where, I knew how to get the best, how they could get the best out of me. However, I do think things have changed. And Bricia, I think you mentioned it. I think it's changed because women are in decision-making positions. And so it changes the paradigm of what the environment looks and feels like.
And Amy, I think for the wine industry, I just read recently somewhere that, out of like the 4,000 California wineries, only 10% have female winemakers. But I guess I'd say but more women seem to be involved in the natural wine business specifically. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I think it's actually been very similar to the evolution in the restaurant and food industry. Because I was the same. Like I started my company 12 years ago, but I've been in the business for over 20 now. And it was very similar. Like women were put in entry-level positions. Very few were in positions of decision-making power. That's changed a lot. Even when I started my company, and back then I was the only woman who was importing and distributing natural wines in California anyway. There were some in New York, but I was the only one here. And definitely I remember that even most of them were male, sommeliers, obviously. And, they were interested in the wines, they were, interested in my book, but they would give me like a small little bottle placement or something. And I remember one of the guys one day, I said, "Hey, you're giving all the buy the glass placements to your brothers. You're not giving anything to me. If you like my book, you got to support it. Like you got to let me in the game." And he sat there for a minute and went quiet and stared at me. And he was like, "You're right. I've been doing that. And I'm going to change that." But to further answer your question, Jen, it's funny because I was just talking to somebody about this last week. Yes, again, when I started my company 12 years ago, there were only a handful of female winemakers, specifically in California. Of course, there were some from Europe and other places, but it was still relatively rare. But I was just saying to someone who actually interviewed me last week about women in natural wine in California that in the last 3 weeks, I have spoken to 6 new young female winemakers about their wines, about picking them up, about us starting to work together. And that absolutely would not have been possible 12 years ago because they were not there. They were not there. And now I've had half a dozen phone calls in 2 weeks, which was, I thought about all the calls I've had with new young winemakers. I was like, oh, wow, they're mostly women. I didn't even think about it for a minute. So it's been a similar trajectory in the wine world, which has been super exciting to see.
And I know there's something you all touched on earlier, where having just support is important, and being able to lift up other women is important. So I did want to talk to you guys, and I know Minh and Bricia, I know you're both involved in Regarding Her, which is an LA-based organization of female restaurant owners. Can you guys tell us a little bit more about the organization and what you guys are doing?
Yeah, sure. So we started Regarding Her. There was 8 of us who founded the organization because for the same reason, it was 8 of us who would just get on these Zoom calls and would just really talk about our hurdles and what was going on. Late fall last year, we started having conversations back in October and really said to ourselves, where do we actually need to make change? What can we do? So within 6 weeks, we put together an event that we call it 10 Days Regarding Her. And we gathered as many women who own restaurants. And it was so beautiful to see our community coming together, do collaborations, uplifting each other, and really talking to each other, building community, and saying the more eyeballs that come to us from each other, from each other, the more our businesses are going to grow. And I saw it, so many restaurateurs saw it, and I thought that was absolutely beautiful and what we need. And now taking it a step ahead, we created a grant that if you are a woman-owned business, a restaurant, or in food business, I highly, highly, highly encourage you to apply. You can just visit regardingherfood.com. But yeah, this grant is to just really go into the hands of women, small business owners that can take that money and inject it into their business and grow. We have so many plans ahead, really just to create mentorship programs, create accelerator programs, because I think so many women lack not only funding, but lack support and lack a lot of education. I think that we as people, I mean, I don't know if this is mostly women or not. I think just in general, a lot of us, I know me as a woman and a woman of color, I always felt like I couldn't ask for help. I always felt like if I asked for help, I would be seen as, I don't know, she doesn't know what she's doing, or, you know, this idea that like my mom, the Mexican mom, did it all, so I have to do it all just like her, right? So I think that I am kind of shedding all those things out. And now I ask my female friends who own restaurants, like, yo, what are you doing about this? And where are you guys getting this? And what are your numbers? And having open wallet systems where we talk about how much money do you spend on this and how much money do you spend on that without feeling insecure, without feeling, without feeling insecure, I would say, and being open about it. And you have no idea how much I have received just mentally, spiritually, just by having their support. It has, without that group of women, I don't think I could have survived last year, because I think a lot of us feel like I'm doing something wrong, maybe I'm failing, but then you realize, no, we are all in this together and we're going to get through this together, and let's find solutions. I think women just find solutions. So that's what we did. And I just love seeing this group of women come together and be there for one another. So yeah. And if you haven't heard about Regarding Her, again, please, regarding herfood.com, visit, join, and apply for a grant.
Okay. And you touched on this a little bit, but just access to funding is difficult. But I mean, I recently read something crazy. I think it was in Fortune, where it said that just 2% of venture capital funds go to women, which is so little, which is insane. And I know many of you on the call, run your own businesses. I guess how has it been trying to secure funding, and what are some of those challenges that you guys are facing as business owners?
I've never taken money.
I just want to say real quick that I further to what you're saying, Jen, also that Bricia, I really love your point. I think this is such a powerful point for women to hear. Women need to talk about money with each other.
Yes, girl,
money. We need to talk about it. It's been part of what's held us back, is that men do talk about money with each other. They always have. And we didn't for various reasons. But it's so powerful for women to talk about money with each other. And I do this actively with my friends, my female friends, especially in the wine business, but even in other industries. And I also, whenever, and I mentor some young women in the wine business, and some of the first things I say to them, I was like, let's talk money. Let me tell you how it worked for me. You tell me how you want it to work for you, and I'll give you feedback, but let's talk money. So that, because it's important, it's powerful. It does buy us freedom.
That's awesome. I had no idea. Yeah, you know what? I have problems talking about money. And it's something that I still struggle with, and talking about Regarding Her, I talk to, women from that group, especially Lynn, all the time. And they've been, the group has been very helpful for me. But I think more importantly for the group, I think I always tend to look at the next generation and how they're going to go about it, and the next generation of women and how they're going to get their project started and how they're going to get the mentorship. And I think that's the long game with her that I am very excited about. But yeah, we don't talk enough. I think, and there's so much going on in the world right now with anti-capitalism, which I totally agree with, but we're also in business, and they've been very uncomfortable conversations with staff members. And then for me, it's been really helpful to have women with shared values who look at things more holistically and just not about the numbers, or how do you consciously look at the numbers. And there are, a lot of women in her, Regarding Her that's been very helpful, for me.
Well, just like men, I have never taken a loan for a business. And my restaurant struggled. And, there was so much shame, I think, around needing money, even when I had a lunch delivery service, when I had my catering company, and this whole thing of suffering in silence. And, going to family members and borrowing money. So, I mean, that was really hard. One of the things that I did and I have done the last 3 years was I have what I call a financial therapist because I talk about money to like an accountant, a business manager, and just lay it all out on the line. And I remember from the first time that we started talking, just the shame that I had about things that I hadn't paid, because I'm like, oh, I have to juggle here to pay that, and all of that shame around that. But once I got over that, things started to flow. But when I look back, the shame is real.
How do you find financial therapists? That's an awesome concept.
There are people who actually, I mean, there are books like Money Honey, but there are people who actually talk to you about what your spending psychology is. And I think that is such a valuable thing to understand, because those tapes you have learned from your family. And a lot of times when the male figures have taken care of the money and I know women whose husbands have died, they never knew what was going on in the house. And so now they're in trouble. They're having, it's an issue. So I think that looking for somebody to actually talks about your financial or just money behaviors, because you don't want to carry that into your business.
Or even just talking with your girlfriends, like, how do you deal with money? Like, do you invest your money? Like, do you save your money? How do you pay yourself? What percentage do you pay yourself? How much goes to benefits? How much do you spend here? How much does this cost? I think it's just having that open conversation. It's step one, because you're already going to like speaking of the subject. And I think I don't know if it's just women. For me, I don't know if it's just communities of color more than anything. I have no idea. I just know that for me, I know that I have a lot of qualities that come from my mom and my dad, because even speaking of money was like, oh, you don't speak about that with people. Like, it's so secretive. But then you look at other people and I'm like, wait, you're rich because you talk about it. Like, wait, how did you, like, wait, you learned about investing when you were 12? Like, bro, I just learned about that thing like 5 years ago. Like, how? Why am I still behind? So I think like having these conversations is so important, just even with girlfriends, just even like I have group texts with different girlfriends, different groups where we just talk about money. And I think that's super, super important. And then from there, someone will come up like Carla, like financial therapist. I never heard about that too, but now I'll be on Google and be like, ooh, financial therapist. Like, I don't know. I'll have to hit up Carla in the DM later. Like, can you share her number?
Yes.
Yeah. And one of the things I learned about myself during COVID, and it was like in passing, I was like, I kind of got like, I got a little annoyed with someone. I'm like, you guys are paying 3 cents more per plastic, per trash bag. And someone stopped me, they're like, wait, are you counting pennies and trash bags? I'm like, I count pennies on everything. The margins are so slim that I'm constantly, every take-up container, I'm like, I want it to be beautiful, but how can I play, like take-up containers are so expensive. And no one talks about that, right? And I'm like always counting pennies. And then my friend's like, you should stop spending, having space to save money and figure out how to make more money. And I'm like, looking, I'm like, wait, I've never thought about it that way.
Yes.
And it's like, I come from
abundance, girl, abundance.
Yeah. Scarcity, I'm like, I think like the big, LA Times, Bill Addison, yay. But it's like, I think like the biggest change for me with this award is I am finally starting to think not from a place of scarcity for the first time in my life. Like and it's like overnight it seemed to change, and it's like nothing really changed, but I think I had to go through this period, and then I'm like, you know what? I have to work from the place that I'm responsible for other humans, and I have to create how do I build and grow rather than working with scarcity all the time. And that's been like
for you, man.
It's a hard one though, it's like being an immigrant and a woman of color. It's like I only know in my world I've thought I've only succeeded because I'm scrappy.
100%. I can 100% relate to you. Like the only way you're gonna get
100%.
rich is by not spending your money.
Yeah.
When in reality, no. The only way you're gonna get rich is by multiplying your money.
I think, so Minh, as we mentioned before, you and your restaurant, Phenakite, won our Restaurant of the Year award this year. We actually have a video that we'd like to show. So let's take a look.
It's been a crazy year. That's where we begin. We often get asked, what kind of cuisine is this? What kind of food is this? And then I said Californian, Angelino, modern Angelino. And then people they don't get the answer they want. So they ask me, where are you from? And I said, Los Angeles. No, but where are you from? I'm like, oh, I think what you want to ask me is I'm Vietnamese. This is not Vietnamese food. My mom cooks amazing Vietnamese food. And the reason I don't call it Vietnamese food is because it would offend a lot of people, especially my mother, because she's like one of those things, she's like, no, if you don't do it the way I do it, it's not Vietnamese. I like to draw inspiration specifically from Los Angeles, but I think LA has such a rich and diverse community that comes with great food. Our menu is inspired by fire, air, ingredients of LA. Phenakite is truly an homage to LA all the time. The origin story is Nikki Nakayama of Anaka was, having a drink one night, and she's like, you know what, I really want to collaborate with Minh. And then she and Carol just called me up when they were drinking, and it just happened. And she's like, do you want to collaborate? I'm like, yeah, of course, you're Anaka, duh, and I love you. Why wouldn't I? I'd be stupid. And I think my greatest strength is my team and our purveyors. Season by season, I look at every ingredient differently. I've seen a loquat a million times. I've used it in savory, I've used it in sweet, I've used it cold, hot, I've crisped it up, so it's I think it's really important to use those ingredients, but through my lens, it's I'm looking through things differently. On March 16th, the mayor of LA closed down, stay at home, and then our team, I don't know what was wrong with me, but instead of breathing and freaking out, I immediately that Sunday while we were planning, I'm like, you know what, let's open back up on Wednesday and let's just give people provisions. And I don't know how we did it, but we did it. We turned it around 2 days, we met, we came up with a menu, we got packaging. I think we were so ahead of the game before everything shut down. And then it really worked for a long time. I mean, takeout for us really worked. And then the shutdown happened again in November, and that was harder than the first time, I think. The second shutdown was really hard. That's when they're like, you know what, we're so tired, just something. Can you just be real? And then so I think I was kind of, I relented and I let them rest. And then once outdoor dining happened again, we came back here, and we've been doing that since Valentine's Day, slowly, very, very slowly, but just getting the quirks. Post-pandemic, I really want people to enjoy Phenakite. I just want to give people a lot of joy, and I think I'm slowly coming out of the pandemic depression and seeing more clearly, and I really want to jump into the next phase and give people a lot of joy. So the future is Phenakite, and who knows what else. Phenakite for celebration and artistic practice. I want a lot of people to have access to it. I want it to be something that has all of the heart and soul and our artistry of Phenakite, but be something that you can have all the time.
Yay, yay, Minh and Phenakite.
Yay, that was great.
Yay. Yes. Yeah, congrats again, Minh. So well deserved. Your restaurant is so special and magical. And funny, in your video, you do mention just feeling of joy. And when I had dinner there, that's all I felt. It was just very joyful and soul satisfying. So congratulations again.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Jen. Yeah, I kind of got caught up in my thought. What I wanted to say, because now that I'm watching this video, what I wanted to say is I think my heart and soul still belongs a lot to porridge and puffs where things are accessible. I kind of got my words minced up there. So to clarify that.
Okay, that's okay. Okay, so Bricia, I wanted to talk to you about, because you and your siblings have been running Guelaguetza for years, and you started an import division of Guelaguetza food products when you were just 22. I credit you with making mezcal like a must-have drink in every bar in LA. You're constantly expanding with more products. You opened a place in Vegas. I guess how do you continue to expand? How do you continue to innovate? What drives you?
That's a really big question. I don't know if I'm ready to answer that. I think that honestly, the easiest thing for me to just pinpoint like what drives me. A few things. I think number one is just the work that my parents laid out for me, like the foundation they laid out. I think about everything my dad was able to achieve. He moved to this country when he was 34 with zero money, and what he was able to build for his children. And then I think about where I am and where I could go, right? I'm educated, I have the internet, I know how to speak English and Spanish, and I'm living in the best time. I think, I know there's a lot of things going on, but I think, we're living in a great time in history, I think, despite everything. So I think about that, and I think every time I think there's a problem, I go back to that, and there's no way this is a problem. Like my parents had issues. Like my parents didn't have food in their table to feed their children. Like those are problems, right? Like I have a roof over my head, and I have the internet. So I feel like I don't have an excuse. I think like that is what drives me. And then with that, it's the legacy that I want to leave behind for my kids. And then my responsibility as a brown woman in this country, and the responsibility that I have to show up for those women that are coming after me, that they have someone to look up to, that they have, like I didn't have a Bricia, but I had a father and a mother that taught me. So I want to be that for them. I think there are so many family restaurants in this country that close their doors because I think that a lot of kids look at that life as maybe less dense or sort of an immigrant life. They go off and those businesses don't go on, and it's such a shame in my mind. And there's nothing wrong with going and not wanting to do things for yourself, but I think there's so many people that don't carry on their family legacies because they're afraid. And I want to be that for them, to say, maybe I should carry this on, and look what that family did. And I think just being there for them, and just taking Oaxaca, to every kitchen in America. And how do I do that? And, even just through this last year, seeing our cookbook just travel throughout America and seeing people cook from my book from all over, that opened my eyes. And I was like, that's so crazy. How else can I reach people, and just doing our food products and, again, I go back to the internet because I'm just so wow, you could literally sell anything you want. And right now is the time to do it. And, seeing people buying our mole jars and our michelada mix, it's just been so amazing and fun. And it just gives me a space to be creative. And yeah, I think that's why I do what I do.
And we actually have a video showcasing you and Guelaguetza, our Gold Award recipient. Let's take a look.
Oh yeah, and Jonathan Gold, stop, because then I will read.
I know.
When we moved to the US in '94, we lived in a room. So because of that, we were so close together all the time. that compounded with the fact that like when you're from Oaxaca, you kind of have a chip on your shoulder about like just people looking down on you in Mexico, you know, like, so you come here and you have that. This place that's almost outgrowth of that room, right? That room is now the restaurant. We come and we hang out, we're here all the time together. And then that chip on our shoulder about like our Oaxacanness and our identity, because now the restaurant's a hub for that. We have to maintain our unity and our identity as, you know, Oaxacans in LA, and that duality of cultures, you know, because now we're like putting our own stamp on this.
I think we were giving a choice, and we made the conscious decision to say, yes, this is going to be our life mission. This is going to be our career. This is going to be, and it is. We love where we come from. We love to talk about our culture.
Yeah.
And we love to feed people our food. There's nothing better than to change someone's perception of an entire culture. And to be able to do that is such a privilege.
Every time we invite people to the restaurant, it's like inviting them to our living room, to our dining room.
Yeah.
Like, I love having people over at my house for dinner. And I wish I could have all of LA over, but I can have them over here.
It was the way that Jonathan Gold wrote about Guelaguetza. It was the way that he understood, because it wasn't written from a way of a very archaeological way of like these people, right? It was from a sense of just authenticity, love, and respect.
Yeah.
And
well, like oneness, where it's like equality.
Yeah, equality. It wasn't as these people are doing this, it was, I've just experienced this. And I think that opened a lot of people's eyes into what was Mexican food, what is Mexican food, right? And explorations of regions. And then to kind of see again this juxtaposition of a Korean building serving a very regional Mexican food, not just like Mexican, right? It's Oaxacan in Koreatown in a very traditional Korean building. What does that mean, right? If you're not from LA, you are just a little bit taken back, but this is LA. This is what Los Angeles is.
The way a culture sees a food is how it sees, it's a reflection of how it sees those people. So like the fact that he saw our food was like a reflection of how he saw us.
So they have something to grasp on. They have to say, I'm so proud of being like this because I have great food, because I have a great language, because I have a great art, because my culture has great music, because I have a beautiful city where I come from. Like all those things kind of, it just sort of, it's an effect that happens.
It's like saying I have worth.
I could never let down my parents. I could never let down Jonathan Gold. And I could never let down Los Angeles because this is needed. This is needed not only for this city, but it's needed for this country. To know that a small family restaurant serving very regional Mexican food can survive for so long. I think it's hope for the rest of the industry.
Oh, I know. Tears. Congratulations again. Guelaguetza is Los Angeles. So really, congrats again, Bricia. So well deserved. All right, Carla, I'd like to ask you a question. I feel like I see you everywhere, and I love it. You write books, you host shows, you host a podcast. How do you keep all the plates spinning? And what advice do you have for other women hoping to do the same?
Well, I want to say first thing, there's no such thing as a perfect balance. When people are asking, how do you balance it all? You don't. You decide what percentage you're going to do when. You honestly have to decide, all right, this week I'm going to do 25% this, 25% that. You know, I tell my husband, who is incredibly supportive, I'm going to be working, we'll do something on the weekend. I have a really great team around me, so it allows me to create and think about new things. But I think that this idea that you can balance it all is really a very false one, because you can't. But you have to decide what takes priority at what time, and that's pretty much what I do. Because, and not to get all woo woo, but I don't know if you all know about Enneagrams. I'm a 7, the adventurer. I'm always saying yes and or this or that. So I have this whole thing of trying to balance myself, and the people around me help balance my oars.
Well, that brings, in your podcast, Say Yes with Carla Hall. I know it focuses on successful people and how they've overcome challenges. I guess, what's one of the biggest challenges you've had to overcome, and how did you do it?
I think, we're talking about the restaurant world. I think the biggest thing for me, one of my biggest challenges, was planning a restaurant and doing it in a very public way, planning it. And then it took me longer to plan it than it was actually open. And so people assume that because you're on television, everything comes easy. And so that meant that I had a very public closing of my restaurant. And so that was not going to change. And so what I decided to do was to be very open and upfront and vulnerable in telling the story about what happened. And I think it was not only cathartic, but I think a lot of chefs and restaurateurs respected the fact that I was saying, this is not easy. I don't care who you are. But I learned so much, and to share that my failure or closing was not necessarily a failure, but I grew from it. And now I'm going to say, 4 or 5 years later, that all of that knowledge that I learned, I will put somewhere else. You never waste the knowledge. And so you keep that in the forefront of your mind.
Definitely.
And Amy, what about you? What's one of the biggest challenges you've had to face as a business owner, and how did you overcome it?
Well, I mean, I would say it comes back to our conversations about money, because I didn't have any. I didn't have any. I didn't have any family money. I could not get a bank loan. So I mean, I started my company with I don't know, I had 25, 30 grand I'd saved away from working. Which is not enough to start a wine company. But it also circles back to what we were saying, and Bricia and a few others were saying earlier, that I was like, you know what? I'm just going to get out there and hustle, and I'm going to run circles around all the guys out there. I'm going to be working on Friday nights till 10 p.m. I'm going to run circles around them. And I don't have any money, but I know how to do this. I know the wines. I know how to sell them. And I'm just going to work harder and longer. And I'm going to buy some, sell some, buy more, sell more. And I've done that for 12 years. And, thank goodness it's worked out for me through the support of a lot of other people. But money was a major thing. Minh was talking about this earlier too. For the first 3-4 years, at least minimum, maybe a bit longer, I definitely would wake up at 4 a.m. and be like, what is happening? How are you going to pay all these bills? How are you going to sell all this wine? And it just step by step became a little bit easier. So, I mean, money was definitely the biggest barrier to getting into the industry. I don't have any partners. I don't have any investors. I don't have any family, nothing. It was just me on my own. I didn't even have any employees at the beginning. Now I do, but I didn't back then. So that was the number one challenge for me. And then number two was really being a woman, especially, like I said, I started 20 years ago. My company started 12 years ago, but there weren't any other women out there selling the wine, especially the wines that I'm selling, the natural wines. So that was a challenge. And then on top of being a woman, I'm a queer woman. And honestly, a big part of the interplay back then was women coming in and flirting with the male somms, and the male somms thought maybe they'd get a date if they bought some wine. And that was out of the equation for me, because they knew that I was no, I'm just here with the wine. Let me show you some wine. Wine. So that was also, a barrier in and of itself. Maybe in some ways gave me some freedom too, to not have to interact with some of the male songs that way. But those were probably the biggest early barriers that I had.
Okay, nice. And I would love to ask each of you, what is the one or the most important thing your current self, if you could go back and tell yourself a decade ago, like give one piece of advice or one piece of knowledge, what would it be?
But don't party so much and get to work. Because you're going to be tired in the future. Put that drink down, girl, and get some sleep. That's what I would tell my younger self, for real. Seriously, I mean, I think it was really fun. I mean, especially like in the industry, there's so much that you do, right? And I think I understand why a lot of our peers abuse alcohol and other substances. It's a hard life, you know, when you're in this industry day in and day out. And you can get really bad habits early on in your career if you're not careful. So for me, it would just be, you know, just continue focusing. I would just tell my younger self, love yourself so deeply that you don't need anything else but that belief in yourself to go on. I think that is, but it's really easier said than done. I think like the believing and loving yourself is one of the hardest things you'll ever do in your life. So I would tell that to myself. Would I believe it? I don't know. I hope I do. But I think that's what I would say to my younger self. Put the drink down, get some sleep, save yourself some wrinkles from the future.
That's good advice all the time. That's good advice.
I think I would tell myself to really have those money conversations and not be afraid of them, or to not feel the shame around them, to really talk about it. I mean, simply that's what I would tell my younger self.
I think I tell myself that do exactly what you want. It's all going to be okay. And I think that's really relevant right now. I talk with my young workforce, my team, and they're just really worried about everything. They're worried about never buying a house, never finding a girlfriend or a boyfriend. They're worried about, I don't know why they're obsessed with not buying, like never being able to buy a house. And I'm like, no one gave me a house. Like, no, I never expected to buy a house. Why is this like so? And then they worry about the environment. They worry about everything. I'm like, it's all going to be okay, you guys. You are exactly where you need to be. Just do what you love.
I think I would tell my younger self, have more compassion for yourself and for other people.
Very good advice. I'm going to take all this advice forever into the future. Thank you. Honestly, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it. This was such a great conversation. Thank you guys again for joining us tonight.
Also, use SPF. I'm like, lather SPF on your face. That's what I would tell myself.
Good point.
Everywhere.
SPF, girl.
SPF.
Whole body.
Your hands, your face.
Everywhere. All the time.
Don't go into the self-tanning booth. That's what I would tell myself.
Yeah.
All of that is good advice.
That's my real advice. Don't wait too long to do what you love. Do it as soon as you think of it.
Yeah. Okay.
I love that.
All right. Thank you guys again. Really appreciate it. Thank you. It was so nice to see all of you.
What an honor.
You guys.
Thank you.
I'm reaching out.
Bye, everyone. So much fun.
Great. All right, Clint, back to you.
I'm coming on, Jess. All right, what a great conversation. Thank you, Jen. Thanks to all the amazing women in that panel doing work that they love and that we all love too. I mean, this food, amazing restaurants, amazing beverages there, and I can't wait to get out and enjoy all those establishments as soon as possible. I'll be out there maybe next week. All right, allow me to thank our partners, starting with our presenting partner, City National Bank. This evening would not have been possible without you. Please support our charity partner, Los Angeles Regional Food Bank. Take a moment, Visit the link in the Zoom chat window to donate now at www.lafoodbank.org. Also, join us next week, Tuesday, June 15th, for our next Food Bowl virtual forum, Red Drinks for Juneteenth. It's exploring the Black foodways of the Juneteenth holiday and beyond. For tickets and more information on our upcoming Food Bowl events, please visit lafoodbowl.com. I'm Clint Schaff with the Los Angeles Times. We're so glad you joined us and hope you had as much fun and learned as much as we did. Thank you and good night.